The smoke continued to curl into the dawn sky when I walked out onto the porch, coffee mug still warm in my hand, only to stiffen at the sight of my police by IKEA burned corpse smoldering in the driveway. That driveway, brick by my grandfather's calloused hands, now held the wreckage of the bike that had taken me through wildfires and standoffs. It resembled a gutted animal. Across the street, Sandra Phelps sat in her golf cart sipping rose from a crystal glass, her eyes shining like she was enjoying a blockbuster. I could have slapped her with cuffs right then, but where's the thrill in that? When she had no idea who I really was 2 days ago, I'd tear into Pine Hollow on that same bike, its engine a loud proclamation of my return. After 15 years of service to state and county law enforcement, I'd returned to claim my inheritancia ranch just outside the sprawl of the Homeowners Association's hold. But the second I parked by my gate, a weighty silence fell, the kind that bodes ill. Sure enough, Sandra strutted out wearing stilettos and a coral-colored blazer so tight it appeared to scream for mercy. She didn't inquire about my name or extend a welcome, pointing at my bike. She snapped, "This isn't a junkyard, sir. No industrial vehicles permitted." I explained to her it was parked, not stored, and state property, not commercial. She wrote on her clipboard and told me I wasn't on the HOA list, so I had no rights to common areas. My own damn driveway. I smiled and said I'd complain to the board. I am the board. She said, her voice as sharp as a knife. That evening, a warning notice was stuck to my fence, printed with an HOA logo that resembled a child's drawing of a courthouse. It demanded $500 for unauthorized car parking, marked final notice. In spite of no advance warning, I disregarded it, drinking coffee on the porch under a starlit sky until a flash, a hiss and a roar startled me awake. My motorcycle was in flames, sopped in something which burned quick and hot. The seat dissolved into itself, and in the light of the flames I watched Sandra's outline lift her glass in a pretend toast before her card buzzed away. I did not pursue her. I didn't call the fire department. I stood there watching my partner and steel burn to ash. That bike had been with me through riots and midnight calls, the only piece of my city life that followed me to this ghost town. Now it was gone. The next morning, I filed a quiet report at the sheriff's office, keeping my badge hidden. Using old contacts, I dug into the HOA's past and found a trail of venom. 24 harassment complaints, 2 foreclosures on technicalities, 3 small businesses driven out by incessant fines. The HOA had no right under law to half its actions, but nobody had pushed back until me. By noon, a new sign was bolted to my property line. No non-HOA members beyond this point. I glared at it, then ripped it out and dropped it on Sandra's lawn. 10 minutes later, she stormed over with 2 men in vests waving a clipboard-like weapon. She complained of obstruction of policy. I stood by my door quiet. One man attempted to force into my garage, stating he was checking for violations. I stopped him, telling him I was accustomed to clowns running circuses. Sandra didn't laugh. That night, I made 2 phone calls, one to the fire chief verifying no burn permit had been issued the night of the fire, and another to the county confirming my ranch was completely outside HOA jurisdiction. They had no say here. Never did, but I didn't bet my hand. Quitting the game too early would be no fun, so I waited, allowing them to conspire, allowing them to mock the loner with no hoe shield, allowing them to defile my land with signs and tickets. They believed they were burning property. They were igniting a fuse. 2 days later, a laminated notice was zip-tied to my mailbox. Red letters, yelling violation. It asserted I owed $2,000 for code violations of my vehicle, neglected landscaping, and unattended HOA meetings I'd never received invitations to. It was ridiculous, but calculated a web of control spun to choke anyone who refused to bow. I walked my land that afternoon, seeing phony utility inspection marks on my fences. No county crew had been by here, I checked. Every HOA notice was self-posted, a shadow government imposing invented rules. At the feed store, a grizzled man named Amos pulled me aside. He recalled my grandfather's hay deliveries prior to the HOA taking over. His face grew dark as he recounted Sandra's ascension 5 years ago, following the previous president's overnight disappearance. She'd made Pine Hollow her fiefdom from discovering grass height, prohibiting wind chimes, even regulating driveway use. A family was once cited for an unapproved American flag. Amos whispered about a Marine Carl who resisted because his land, like mine, was off HOA limits. They cut his irrigation, towed his truck into a ditch, and drove him to sell at a loss. Sandra called it community restoration. I thanked Amos and left, spotting Sandra's golf cart idling at the lot's edge, watching me like a hawk. When I got home, my water line was off, a note citing irrigation violations. I laughed, turned it back on, and dug into the HOA's charter. My ranch wasn't under their dominion. Each fine was riddled. I drove to the county recorder's office, filed a complaint, and called the state housing authority with pictures, screenshots, and neighbor statements. But I had more evidence of intent, so I baited trail cameras and hollow fence posts, undetectable to the naked eye. That evening, 2 men snuck onto my property. One hosed paint on my garage, another tacked up a notice. The video was evident: Sandra's son, Ethan, and her husband, Greg. The following morning, they came back, feigning to check on Greg, writing on a paperless clipboard. When they spotted me, Ethan grumbled concerning community dangers. I asked him which statute supported him. He stiffened. That night, my former partner called, informing me that somebody impersonating a state agent was investigating my sheriff status. Sandra was anxious, and that made her hazardous, but I wasn't fazed. I'd encountered cartels and robbers. She was only a petty tyrant with a printer. At 3 a.m., gravel crunched outside. 2 flashlights danced near my fence. Greg in his utility vest sprayed paint, while another figure hung around. My cameras caught him clear as day. By morning, my garage read, "Community violator" in red, a property reclamation notice nailed to my barn. They wanted me to snap, to give them an excuse, but I was building a case, not a tantrum. At the print shop, the owner, Clara, recalled Sandra's clandestine commands, such as a sea-sandist with forged county seal. At the restaurant, the cook took me to Clarence, a one-time treasurer, whose house was confiscated over illegal charges. Clarence described how his car got towed and junked with no notice, compelling him to give up his house. He gave me the original HOA charter establishing only Oakage homes were subject to its rum ranch. Wasn't I discovered payments to a company that did not exist with Sandra's sister Lisa? That was fraud sufficient to draw the state in. Then Sandra's staff messed up. A child, Matt, appeared stating a mold inspection under HOA code. I insisted on county ID. He stuttered. I called Deputy Sarah, flashed my badge, and had him arrested for impersonation. Sandra appeared screaming about her staff. I introduced myself, Ethan Caldwell, County Sheriff. Her face froze, a machine short-circuiting. I told her she was lucky I didn't arrest her too. She ran speechless. I forwarded the story to a television news station with videos, notices, and the charter. At 6 p.m. they broadcasted it. Sheriff uncovers rotten HOA neighbors, spammed my phone with story: a disabled person fined for his medical van. A couple driven to bankruptcy by fraudulent credit reports, a garden grown above a fence dispute. Fear had gagged them until now. I organized a barn meeting projecting evidence to 40 neighbors. They wept, cursed, clapped, not for me, but for truth. Maria asked what was next. I said we could wait for the state or sue collectively. She opted for the latter. Within a week, 40 signed statements supported our suit. Sandra sent frantic emails regarding disruptions, accusing me of privacy violations. I forwarded them to the county. They told her to cease. She didn't posting flyers stating I wasn't a sheriff, the same sheriff who'd arrested her son. The state came with HOA and tow files as residents cheered, some praying, some. The housing board scheduled a hearing. I testified. A nonprofit approached us wanting our story for a documentary. I directed them to the victims. At the hearing, I brought it all: videos, maps, invoices, the charter. The room fell silent. The board disbanded, the HOA vacated fines, and sent Sandra to prosecution. Her house lost power. A moving truck showed up, but she only piled boxes, pretending normally. I let her. She'd sink soon enough. The trial was a spectacle. Residents filled the courtroom, their silence more weighty than the oak benches. Diane testified about her husband's van, Howard about his fence, Maria about late-night threats. I recounted the bike fire, the fraud, Sandra's measured pace. The prosecution presented thousands of abused HOA fund vacations. a home destination. Sandra's defense argued she was misinterpreted, but her board was merely family, her votes a farce. The judge sentenced her to 100 hours of community service beginning with cleaning. My garage excluded her from leadership and froze her accounts. She blinked at the directive, her attorney's protest disregarded. Outside cameras thronged as she entered head down into oblivion. The following day, she removed paint from my garage under supervision. Her empire sized down to rubber gloves I didn't observe. I walked my property, observing repairs, passing neighbors planting flowers, waving freely. The HOA building became Pine Hollow Community Hall, a venue for potlucks, not fines. Sandra emptied her house. Her golf cart was sold. A letter came and signed, but hers. I thought I was serving the neighborhood. I didn't know how much I hurt people. Take care of it. I put it away. Her guilt was not my burden. The town celebrated a party, banners reading, "Welcome home, Sheriff." I said, "It wasn't about me, they didn't care." An old man toasted, "You stood when the fire began. I patrolled my property at night, scars fading." A shiny new bike where the other had burned. A child's graffiti read, "Ride ahead always." Reality had uprooted fear. Sandra started the first fire, but I regained control, burning her lies until only justice remained. The wind bore rain. Send a storm was imminent, but Pine Hollow was prepared.